So this is going to be the very ending of section 3.1. We're left with one problem left to do, and it's really a problem much like the problem we did on number 6. And if you'll remember, what we're asked to do here is to write the solution in interval notation. And we had these sort of steps that we would go through where we move everything to one side, factor, we plot the points on a number line, check intervals with test points, and find a solution. The part that will be slightly different is this factoring part, because we're going to do an example where, I know, spoiler alert, I'm choosing something that doesn't factor because I want you to see what happens when it doesn't factor. Now you'll notice on this one it's already got everything on the same side, so we don't really have to do sort of that step one thing. But this doesn't factor. If I tried to factor it, I'd need two numbers that multiply to 2. Well, that's 2 and 1, but they don't add to -4, so that's not going to work. So when that's the case, we're going to actually find a solution with the quadratic equation. So we have 4, well, it's x equals -b, so if b is -4, so I've got +4, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is -4 squared, minus 4, a is 1, times c is 2. All over 2a, which is 2 times 1. So I have 4 on the outside. Underneath the radical, we have 4 squared, which is 16. And at the end, 4 times 1 times 2 is 8. So I have 16 minus 8, which is 8, all over 2. Now, square root of 8 does simplify, right? In fact, let me just write down 8. Right, we can break down 8 into 4 and 2, and then into 2 2's. And there are 2 2's underneath the radical at that point, so they'll come out. So this is actually the same as having 4 plus or minus 2 square root 2, because the square root of 8 is 2 square root of 2. And then, as we've noticed before, these three all have a coefficient in common, a factor in common. They can all be divided by 2. So we'll divide them all by 2, and so we get 2 plus or minus the square root of 2. Now, it's kind of useful to have an approximation for what each of these are. That is, what is 2 plus the square root of 2 approximately, and what is 2 minus the square root of 2 approximately. As a reference point, this is 3.4 if you add them, and if you subtract them, it's 0.6 approximately. So the reason that matters is because when we're choosing test points, we need to know more than just, hey, this is 2 minus the square root of 2, and this is 2 plus the square root of 2. I need to know what those approximately are so I can figure out what points I'm going to test. So if this is, I'll just write it in, sort of parentheses underneath it as a reference for us. If this is approximately 3.4 and this is approximately 0.6, I kind of like testing the number 0 because it's easy to plug in. Well, 0 would be over here on this one. And then I need a number between 0.6 and 3.4, and I love the number 1. It's so easy to work with, so we'll choose 1. And then something bigger than 3.4, and I'll choose 4. Now again, you don't have to choose those points. You could choose something different, but it gives you kind of a reference as to what you might want to choose. So we're going to test each of those points. So if I plug in 0 to this equation, right, I get a positive 2. Well, so that's positive. So it's a positive on the left-hand side of the equation. If I plug in the number 1, and I do 1 squared minus 4 times 1 plus 2, this is 1 minus 4 plus 2. It's negative. So it's a negative between. And then we do a value on the opposite side, number 4. So I have 4 squared minus 4 times 4 plus 2. Well, these two are exactly the same, so they cancel out. One's positive, one's negative. So I'm left with the positive 2 at the end. In particular, I'm left with the positive. So it's positive over here. Sorry, my values are so big they're taking up all the space. And then what we're actually asked to find on this one, though, is where it's less than 0. So less than 0 would mean negative. I want the answers where it's negative. Well, it's negative in between here, right? That's where it was negative. It's on that part of the graph. So my solution will be the in-between part of that. It'll be from 2 minus the square root of 2 to 2 plus the square root of 2. And because it says less than and not less than or equal to, we're going to use parentheses. If it had an equal to, we'd use brackets.